and new courses in Annex 3 and course change report, Annex 4, and and for approval items from the Committee on Committees, Committee Appointments, Annex 6 are attached. All of those in favor of accepting the consent agenda, please indicate by saying aye and raising your hand online. Thank you. You can lower your hands online. All those opposed, please say nay and or raise your hand online. Consent agenda is accepted. Thank you very much. Next up is a report from the Chair of the Curriculum Committee, Darko Velichovsky. Darko?
That's Diane. Thank you. The Faculty Senate Curriculum Committee did not have a scheduled meeting on its calendar since the last Faculty Senate meeting, so I will not have anything to report today. I will. We are, however, meeting this week on November 7th, and I will report on that at the next Faculty Senate meeting.
Thank you, Darko. Any questions for Darko? Okay. Next on the agenda is a report from the Committee on Committees. The chairperson, Ilkin Bilgiscu, is unable to attend today's meeting. We already approved the committee membership changes in the consent agenda. Now, time for a report from the faculty representative to the Board of Governors, Leslie Cottrell. Leslie?
Leslie Cottrell, School of Medicine. I don't have anything new to report other than just to continue to encourage everyone to provide thoughts, comments, concerns to the Qualtrics that's in a link on our agenda. We have been receiving some suggestions which have moved forward to the search committee and ourselves. Very helpful. So we just wanted to put that out there. The next meeting is late November. I'll have a
Okay. Any questions for Leslie before she returns to her seat? She is running like, whoo. No? Okay, thank you, Leslie. Next is the report from President Gee.
Well, thank you. Gosh, you're running a fast meeting here. I hardly had time to settle down, as a matter of fact. So anyway, welcome everyone. I'm glad to be here with all of you today. First of all, last week we announced that an experienced education leader with ties to the Mountain State will become the next president of West Virginia University, Potomac State College. I'm pleased to welcome Dr. Jerry Wallace, currently president of Danville Community College in Virginia, who will begin his term at Potomac State College president as our president on December 1st. Now, the provost is going to provide us more information on Dr. Wallace, but let me just say that he does bring a unique blend of experience and leadership that will help him position our campus in Kaiser, but also the role that Potomac State can play in the broader university system. He'll do very well in that regard. Last week, also, some of you saw this, that we hosted our governor on campus and a number of state leaders in this special session that just finished. They appropriated another $2 million for the Rockefeller Neuroscience Institute. And so we had a bill signing ceremony, and the funding will allow the RNI to expand upon its current research using focused ultrasound technology to treat Alzheimer's disease, substance use disorder, and other conditions. And of course, we will also have upcoming clinical studies which will focus on treating food addiction, post-traumatic stress disorder, and other conditions. Since the academic year started, we have seen new evidence for our university's growing educational and outreach impact, and this is certainly one of those. The Outdoor Recreation and Economic Collaborative secured $1.2 million grant from the Appalachian Regional Commission to expand the state's outdoor recreation economy. And then we had additional matching funds, which brought this up to about $1.8 million. I must say that for those of you who haven't had a chance to visit any of our offices around the state, we have 5 sites now. They are extraordinarily active places. This program has been particularly successful. There are other programs, one in Bentonville, Arkansas, one in Tulsa, one in Tulsa, Oklahoma. Neither one of those have been quite as successful as ours. We have about a 97% retention rate among all of those who've come and joined us, which is really quite extraordinary. Our university has also received a $1 million grant to launch a cyber resilience resource center. The product of work done by Dr. Chris Ramazan with the Honors Excel program. The center is likely to be the first of its kind in the nation. It will fulfill our land grant service mission by protecting the data of consumers and the businesses while better preparing our students for growing cybersecurity field. This year, the field's popularity and a curriculum overhaul in the Lane Department of Computer Science and Electrical Engineering has generated an 88% increase in computer science and cybersecurity measures. And of course, in doing that, we're aligning the industry demands. The department introduced courses in such areas as engineering for societal impact, responsible AI, safe and secure robotics, and software security. And they're combining these with research and internships that are possible. Last month, I've actually been on the road a lot. I visited a number of high schools around the state. Last week, we visited Capitol High School, Capitol Midland High School, and this week we're going to visit Lindsley in Wheeling. We're going to visit a couple of other schools in the Northern Panhandle. I just say that the visit to Braxton County, of course, reinforced something that I think all of you know, and that is the fact that our high school colleagues around the state do exceptional work. And because of that, we hope to work more closely even with our high schools. We have the Educational Collaborative, which has been immensely successful. But also, we are discovering that in working more closely with principals, superintendents, and certainly with school personnel, we are increasing the possibility of students going on to college, but more importantly, for me at least, is for them to come to the university. We also, by the way, stopped at the WVU Medicine's Braxton County Hospital. As you know, we now have 25 hospitals that service the people in the state, and very successful in that regard. When I visited the hospital, one of the patients happened to tell me that without this hospital in this small community in Braxton County, that she would not really have access to great health care. We also opened, by the way, a new orthopedic hospital in Charleston as part of our Thomas Health System. I also, by the way, had an opportunity to tour the Mountaineer Food Bank, which is in Gassaway, West Virginia. I had no idea that the state food bank was in Gassaway, but it has about 70 employees. It provides great opportunities for many of the local food banks to get access to good food and good options in terms of what they need to do to feed local communities. So all of these show the continuing work of our extension programs, of our efforts in terms of medicine and in terms of programs that really focus on developing activities in which we combine business, industry, and certainly the university. So saying that, Madam Chair, those are my remarks. Do you have any questions for me? Anyone? Seeing or hearing none, then I will proceed.
Thank you for your time, President Gee. And now the report from Interim Provost Paul Kreider. Provost Kreider?
Thank you. As President Gee mentioned, we have a new president at Potomac State College starting on December 2nd, and that is Dr. Jerry Wallace. And I'll just mention a couple more things. He's a recognized servant leader and experienced administrator for campuses similar to Potomac State College. And during his tenure at Danville Community College in Virginia, the campus saw 6 consecutive semesters of enrollment growth. And Dr. Wallace is also a champion of community engagement programs and workforce development. I know he'll bring some energy to Potomac State and build on the student-employee experience as he helps to grow that campus. We feel fortunate to have Dr. Wallace joining us, and it wouldn't have happened without the work and the dedication of a great search committee and the involvement of faculty and staff and students on Potomac State's campus during the process. So I'm really grateful to each of them for their participation in this important search. On the West Virginia University Tech campus, I want to give you some piece of news. It includes a recent $100,000 grant from the NSF to Associate Professor of Biology and Microbiology, Aida Jimenez Esquilan. Professor Jimenez Esquilan will be partnering with faculty from Fairmont State and Glenville State Universities to develop programming that supports talented, low-income students in Appalachia who want to achieve their goals in the STEM areas. So we're very happy about that. I wanted to give you some news from Morgantown. So congratulations to Chris Ramazan, as President Gee mentioned. That's a great project, a $1.5 million grant for a Center of Cybersecurity and Cyber Resilience. We're very, very happy about that one. Another one is the recent SHAPE West Virginia conference at Canaan Valley, provided faculty and students from the College of Applied Human Sciences a platform for showcasing its leadership in health and education. James Wyant, Associate Professor and Associate Director of the School of Sports Sciences, was given the Honor Award, which recognizes members of SHAPE West Virginia who have inspired others through their service and leadership. And doctoral candidate Lindsay Berneisen was awarded the Young Professional Award for her contributions in the field of health and physical education. So a recent win in Statler is congratulations to Sumya Srivastava, who's Assistant Professor in the Chemical and Biomedical Engineering Department, and her students for the remarkable achievements at the SciEx annual meeting in Raleigh, North Carolina. They received 3 poster awards from a pool of 120 participants. They got first, third, and honorable mention. Raphael Oladokun, a PhD student in chemical engineering, was awarded the best presentation of the conference. Also, Piyush Mehta, Associate Professor in Mechanical Materials and Aerospace Engineering, was recently appointed to the Space Weather Advisory Group, a federal advisory committee for the White House's Space Weather Operations Research and Mitigation Committee. So congratulations to Professor Mehta. So I wanted to also highlight some opportunities. So the Lyon Professorship, the Harriet E. Lyon Professorship in Women's and Gender Studies is now open for applications through January 21st. The professorship is named for the first woman graduate from WVU and was endowed in honor of Judith Gold Stitzel, founding director of the WVU Center for Women's and Gender Studies. Our applicants must be a full-time employee and faculty member at WVU, including our satellite campuses. The applicant must also have an established track record demonstrating commitment and contributions to women's and gender studies in or outside of academia. The professorship is open to all faculty ranks and categories. However, those who hold tenure or a regular teaching assignment in the Center for Women's and Gender Studies are not eligible. So a previous recipient of the professorship can be reappointed, but not for consecutive terms. So I hope you got that information. If you have any questions, you can contact Stephen Ballant in the Eberly College. So last week, the Office of Undergraduate Research began promoting their fall undergraduate research symposium. Please encourage your undergraduate researchers to submit an abstract. Undergraduates from all majors are invited to submit. Abstracts are due November 14th, and the symposium will be on Saturday, December 7th. So there's some awards I want to mention. So today we launched the call for nominations for the annual Nicholas Evans Excellence in Advising Awards. This award recognizes exceptional undergraduate advising and mentoring provided by both faculty and professional advisors at WVU. The up to 5 recipients will receive a $1,250 award. If you're interested in nominating a professional or faculty advisor, visit the Nicholas Evans Award website for more detailed information. The submission deadline is November 29. And lastly, the WVU Libraries Faculty Assembly is seeking nominations for 2 awards, the Outstanding Librarian Award and the Distinguished Service Award. These awards are presented once every 3 years to recognize exceptional contributions toward the delivery, development, or expansion of library services or special programs for the constituents of WVU. Nominations must be submitted on the official nomination form by Monday, February 17th. There's still some time. More information and nomination forms are available on the library's Faculty and Staff Awards webpage. So I encourage you to nominate those professionals in the library with whom you work, who have done exceptional work. So that is my report. Are there any questions for me today?
Nina Pena, Davis College. I have just a quick question. It was great to hear of the success of our students in national meetings and getting those awards. So how can we actually get our students in the list? We have had several that have shined in international meetings, and we never hear about that. How do we get it to your desk?
Well, I think the easy one would be send it to me directly. That would be good. I think what we do sometimes is we pull things off of what we see coming out in WVU Today, or what we see maybe through an email, a listserv, but there's no real foolproof method except probably just sending it to me directly. Okay? Any other questions? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Now we have an update on faculty attrition and governance within the new budget model from Mark Gavin.
No, we'll start with that one. No, just the third, no, the first. Want to open both of them? I'll toggle. That one. Thank you. All right, good afternoon. In the months following academic transformation, several parties, including Faculty Senate, began asking for data around voluntary faculty separations from the university. This is not data that we typically provide or compile and share. Rather, we annually report each October to the Higher Education Policy Commission and others our total headcount data, which captures the sum of voluntary and involuntary separations, hiring activity, and continuing employment within a given year. In what we're reporting here today, we are isolating a subset of this larger data to address the specific requests made of us. Voluntary faculty separations through resignations and retirements are a normal part of the rhythms of an academic institution. Faculty members choose to leave each year for any number of reasons. And importantly, we don't officially track the reason for voluntary separations. And this is particularly relevant to the case of resignations. But the concern driving the request for this data is that we might see a larger than typical numbers of voluntary separations as a result of academic transformation. And some even predicted a mass exodus of faculty. To address this request, we examined the data for the Maine and HSC Morgantown campuses, as this is where academic transformation carried required adjustments to faculty numbers within specific colleges and schools. The focal year is academic year 23 and 24. If academic transformation had an impact on voluntary faculty separations, this is where we would begin to see it. To understand if academic year 23-24 voluntary separation numbers were higher than usual, we also examined the data for 6 years prior, beginning with academic year 17-18. This allowed us to capture 2 years prior to COVID to make sure that COVID years of AY 19-20 and academic year 2021 were not skewing any patterns. Each academic year reported on voluntary separations occurring between October 1st and September 30th. So, for example, the figures provided for academic year 23-24 captures any resignations or retirements occurring between October 1st of 2023 and September 30th of 2024. In addition to providing total voluntary separation numbers, we also segmented along 2 dimensions. First is by type of voluntary separation, specifically resignations and retirements. Second is by faculty category, specifically tenure track, and then non-tenure track. Non-tenure track faculty include clinical, library, research, service, and teaching tracks. We provide voluntary faculty separations both in raw numbers and as a percentage of total faculty. Importantly, the numbers reported for faculty separations and faculty only and total faculty only include benefits eligible faculty. And it's also important to note that any voluntary separations that counted toward required reductions of academic transformation were not included in the numbers reported here. So, consistent with the initial request, the numbers reported here help address concerns about voluntary faculty separations above and beyond or as a result of academic transformation. And with this background, now onto the data. This first set of data presented looks at main campus and HSC combined. Across all 7 years, total voluntary separations range from a low of 146 in academic year 2020 to 2021 to a high of 197 in academic year 2022 to 2023. The focal year of academic year 23 to 24 with 185 total voluntary separations showed a decrease over the 2 years prior. With respect to voluntary separations as a percent of total faculty, it ranges from a low of 6.13% in academic year 2020 to 21 to a high of 8.1% in academic year 22 to 23. The focal year of academic year 23 to 24 at 7.99% is not an outlier relative to other years. Both in terms of raw numbers of total faculty separations and as a percentage of total faculty, the COVID years of academic year 19 to 20 and academic year 20 to 21 are noticeably lower than the years that both precede and follow them. If there is any segment that has seen a noticeable increase in voluntary separations, it is resignations amongst non-tenure track faculty. However, that increase does not appear to have begun in academic year 23-24, suggesting an impact of academic transformation. Rather, that increase really began in academic year 21 to 22. To get a more nuanced understanding of the data, we also looked at the totals disaggregated into main and HSC campuses, and we'll begin showing that data with the main campus. For the main campus, across all 7 years, total voluntary separations ranged from a low of 56 in academic year 20 to 21 to a high of 95 in academic year 18 to 19. With respect to voluntary separations, as a percent of total faculty, it ranges from a low of 4.98% in academic year 20 to 21 to a high of 9.63% in the focal year of academic year 23 to 24. Thus, both in terms of total number of voluntary separations and as a percentage of total faculty, academic year 23 to 24 did see a bit of an increase over the previous years. As a raw number and a percentage, academic year 23 to 24 is most similar to academic year 18 to 19. In fact, that year saw a higher number of total voluntary separations, though this was driven in comparison, but a larger number of, through a larger number of retirements. What is noticeable in academic year 23 to 24 is the increase in the number of resignations over previous years. While the number of resignations amongst tenure track went up slightly from academic year 22 to 23, it was still lower than in academic year 18 to 19. Resignations amongst non-tenure track faculty have seen a more pronounced increase. Now moving to the HSC campus, across all 7 years, total voluntary separations range from a low of 73 in academic year 18 to 19 to a high of 125 in academic year 22 to 23. With respect to voluntary separations as a percentage of total faculty, it ranges from a low of 6.43% in academic year 18 to 19 to a high of 9.36% in academic year 22 to 23. As a percentage of total faculty, voluntary separations in the focal year were toward the lower end across the 7-year time frame. Particularly noteworthy is that resignations amongst non-tenure track decreased from 101 in academic year 22 to 23 to 71 in academic year 23 to 24. So, did academic transformation lead to additional voluntary faculty separations? Did faculty voluntarily leave because of academic transformation? Without knowing the specific reasons for each voluntary separation in academic year 23 to 24, it is hard to say, but anecdotally, we know that some did. Did faculty voluntarily separate in greater numbers in academic year 23-24 than in previous years? Different people will look at the data and come to different conclusions. The combined data across the main and HSC campuses would not suggest an increase in the couple of years relative to the couple of years prior. When we disaggregate the data, it would appear that we have seen a bit of an uptick on the main campus. This is not unanticipated. And while it was critical to undertake the academic transformation work to better position WVU for the future, these additional voluntary separations represent and do represent a real loss to the university. The data reported here doesn't capture what they represented to us, active scholars, teachers, and often long-term members of our community who contributed to the university and made a difference. Whether this loss is typical or atypical relative to the prior years, and whatever percentage of faculty they represent, it is still a loss to our WVU community. We recognize that when faculty resign or retire, it puts additional pressures on the remaining faculty, even if only temporarily. Thank you for stepping up and leaning in. We are working closely with the deans and department chairs to retain faculty when we can and to backfill vacancies where the need exists. Through a difficult time at the university, we have been able to accomplish so much because of the tireless work and dedication of you, our faculty. We continue to help our students learn and prepare to enter the workforce, tooled for success. And through your hard work, we've posted a near 2% increase in retention to hit our highest retention rate ever. For your unwavering commitment to the students, thank you. We've also seen a record year in both research and philanthropy. This also owes in no small part to your efforts. We recognize that we have real work to do to repair morale and restore a sense of normalcy. That work has already started and it will continue under a new president. The provost office team is committed to helping the successful candidate do that work, and we will engage with this group to help us in that effort. And with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Natalie Singh Corcoran, Eberly College. Just one point of clarification and one question. So the data doesn't include any non-contract renewals for non-tenure track faculty. Is that correct?
That would be correct, as those would not be classified as resignations or retirements.
And then my second question is, can you tell me which years, where there might have been any early separation incentives?
We had a voluntary separation incentive program of VSIP in 2019, and then we had a voluntary phase incentive program in 2021.
Thank you.
Hi, Kelly Watson, Eberly College. I guess my question is kind of putting these numbers in a larger context. are these similar to peer institution? Is losing 10% of faculty in a given year consistent with how other peer institutions are doing? I guess I'd just like to see our numbers in context, in conversation with other institutions.
So as I mentioned, that we don't typically compile and report these numbers. That's true of other institutions as well. So unfortunately, there's no way to benchmark this against other institutions. Like us, most other institutions report their total headcount, which is again the sum of hiring, losses, returning. There's no way to segment that out and see what other institutions are doing by way of resignations. Mhm.
Brian Powell, Statler College. If you can go back to the slide where you had main campus data,
Certainly.
I noticed that the number of faculty who are retired in academic year 23-24 is probably roughly half on average what you would normally see, which kind of begs the question that a lot of the faculty who retired may have been people that you are excluding because they retired to meet the quotas for academic transformation. I guess with that, what is the breakdown of faculty departures associated with academic transformation with people who were non-renewed, terminated, and who chose to retire voluntarily?
Hang on a second. Let me follow that one more time. So lower than previous years on retirements in the
Yeah,
focal
so-
year.
So my assumption is that people who normally might have retired in 23-24 went through and volunteered to leave as part of academic transformation cuts, and you've excluded them from this data set.
So I'll answer that in a couple of ways. We did not break down on the published reductions by category of, whether it was retirements or what action led to reduction. So I don't have that to report and can't make that comparison. The other thing that might play into this, we'd have to parse out, is the question that was asked just before, which is what was the effect of the voluntary separation programs? We did see some retirements there that might have elevated the years prior relative to the focal year. So some of those phased retirements might have had an impact on making those years prior higher than what we would have normally seen. So we'd have to also take a look at that. That's a long way of saying I can't answer that question right
Is
now.
it possible to have that data compiled and made available?
I would need to kind of consult with our personnel folks to see if we could put that together.
Okay, I think that would be interesting to look at.
Understood.
Thank you.
Okay, Highland Lee from Engineering College. I have a question about our college. Any idea about the number of faculty who left? They are not let go, who quit in the past 2 years. And, any idea about the number from last year, January?
For your particular college?
Yes.
We do have, we have the information available by college, but that's not something that we have shared yet.
Are they going to be shared in the future? Because we just want to see the number, and if the number you reported are, consistent or compared to what we heard in the college. We are hearing so many people leaving, and junior and associate professors, and we worry about the future. And the earlier you share the number, the better for the faculty who are still here and faculty who are interviewing, who are considering to depart.
Sure. So I don't want to stand up here individually and offer the commitment that we would come back and offer that data. I will carry that request forward and we'll come back with an answer as to whether we can provide it or not. I would say that that information is contained in the summary of the retirements and resignations. They would be in the total aggregate that we provided.
Okay.
Even if we haven't broken it down by college, the summation across the colleges is provided in that number that I just provided up here.
The reason I'm asking is because the faculty has been keep asking this number to university and college. Many faculty, especially junior faculty, like to hear this number.
Has your college provided you with that number?
No,
No? Okay.
they are following your suggestion.
Okay. And might I also, I missed on the front end what college you are from?
Engineering.
Engineering. Okay, got it. Thank you. you want to read it?
Vladislav, do you want to unmute and ask your question?
Yes, I'm on mute. So it's Vlad Ketsic, Statler College of Engineering and Mineral Resources. So do you or Provost have final numbers for the enrollment for Morgantown campus?
I will speak to that in just a minute. If you would give me just a couple of minutes after we finish any questions about faculty, I will speak to enrollment.
Hi, Amy Weisslogel, Eberly College. Just a point of clarification, which is I know our program, Geology and Geography, began an academic transformation in 2021. So the impact of the transformation extends prior to just the year that the RIFs were implemented.
Fair point. The bulk of it is 23, 24, but understood.
Sean McWilliams, Eberly College. My question is part of what was asked before about the voluntary retirements as part of academic transformation. But I guess my question is, what was the motivation for excluding the voluntary separations from that data, and can you just put them back in? I feel like
They're not excluded. They would be included in here. So to the degree that they contributed to any retirement numbers in those prior years, they would be counted in here.
so the 23, 24, that number was both. That was including anyone who you were counting as part of the reduction of the academic transformation.
No, so let me, I'll clarify. The voluntary separation incentive programs that ran in 2019 and then 2021, anybody who took advantage of those programs, their numbers would be included in this table. Any retirements that were registered as a means for meeting the reductions that were part of academic transformation, they would not be included in these numbers because they were meant to, again, serve a different purpose. The question here was, did we see numbers above and beyond the reductions that were part of academic transformation? So,
I mean, my own question would be, do we see an increase in resignations and retirements during the period of academic transformation, regardless of whether, right? I mean, if they were put in the bin of this helps satisfy what we want to do, that I don't really feel like that's an accurate reflection of the impact of people choosing to leave, because the people still chose to leave. So I'd personally be interested to see the total number, regardless of whether it was
whether the
considered
retirements counted toward the reductions or
right,
not.
Right, exactly.
Understood. We chose a different approach, but I understand what you're saying.
Thank you.
Okay, it's me again. Next question from also faculty. They really like to see when university will announce the completion of the workforce transformation, or is there any timeline?
The completion of academic transformation?
Yes. We are not going to cut more faculty in this movement.
So I think several people have spoken to that on several occasions. I know President Gee and Provost Kreider have each spoken to that, as have others. I think as a distinct program, academic transformation has run its course, but we have woven what academic transformation seeks to accomplish into our regular operating procedures. So through an annual review process and through how we approach the 5-year Board of Governors review, what this is all about now is being better at utilizing and managing our resources, financial, human resources, et cetera. So rather than, and it is our wish at this point, that rather than having to go through what we went through academic transformation, which was admittedly a disruptive event, rather what we see is an ongoing annual adjustment, so that as we see enrollments and other things ebb and flow in particular programs and departments, we're making small adjustments along the way through normal personnel and financial management, so that we don't have to make these major adjustments every 5-10 years. Rather, each year, we're kind of looking at what's happening inside of programs and then considering through regular personnel gains or personnel losses, saying, do we need to refill a particular position? Do we need to add a position because of the metrics that we're seeing, whether it be on research or enrollment or any other number of metrics that we take a look at? So academic transformation as a program or project that we saw, the intent is that it doesn't repeat, but the features of it should become part of our normal operating procedures so that we don't have to go through a disruptive event like that again.
Okay, and from what I hear from faculty, and they are still waiting to hear something, say we are not going to further cut faculty in large amounts. So that will help the stabilization of the junior faculty, and that's affecting our operation. I can see our junior faculty leaving and their discussion with faculty senate, with senior faculty. And I think that's very important. I'm passing the information to university, and they like to hear a clear answer when we are not going to further cut faculty in this program.
Sure. Well, I can defend it. I can tell you that in the provost office, we are not mobilizing to execute anything like we did for academic transformation. That is not something we were preparing for.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Hi, Megan Light from the College of Creative Arts and Media. So, Mark, I have a question. How many, if you know this answer, how many of these voluntary separations are normally replaced? Because when I look at the first graph you showed us, it looks like a lot of people leave and then they're renewed. And so I think that's part of the questions that we're kind of asking here too.
Yeah, it's a fair question. I don't have those numbers with me right now. I mean, the question is for every resignation voluntarily, are we replacing that on a one-to-one basis? I don't have that with me right now. It's a fair question. We have, we do, and I'm sure everybody is aware that we have, hiring controls in place that would include committees that look at replacing requested positions that occur either because new positions are needed, presumably for enrollment growth or research activity, or because of attrition. What I will tell you is this, is those committees that are in operation, both on the HSC side and in the provost side, they work closely with the department chairs and the deans for any of those requests that are made to take a look at what's the case for it. Is, do the metrics, whether we're looking at research, whether we're looking at enrollment, does the case support the need for replacement? And if it does, we absolutely authorize the replacement of that, working with the department heads and deans. Does it always lead to a replacement? No. If the metrics suggest that there's, again, go back to resource management, responsible management of our resources. If it's not needed, then we will call that into question, usually with the deans or department chairs, and see, is there an opportunity there to use those resources in a different way? But often, and I'm not giving you an answer number-wise because I don't have it, but often that attrition does lead to replacement. One-to-one, no, I'm sure it doesn't, but often it does because the need would be there. But again, we're looking at every position, and this is true on the staff side as well. We're looking at every position that becomes available, saying, do we still need that position? If so, move forward. Or is there a chance to rethink that position, both what it looks like and or a different way of operating that would allow us as a university to use those resources differently?
Okay, thank you.
Hi, Katie Corcoran at Burley College. The total faculty count, did you exclude faculty that were reduced from academic transformation?
So, I would, I'd have to phone a friend up here, but I'm not sure we're ready to answer that question now. I should know that, and I don't. I apologize. I'll have to come back and offer clarification on that. Unless somebody out in the audience could offer an answer. We're gonna have to hold off on answering that right now, and I'll come back and do so. Okay.
If it didn't, could we get those numbers to
Yes.
see? Because it would affect the
I'll come back and
percentages.
offer clarification.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
but I understand what you're asking for. What exactly is in the denominator? Yes. All right. Shall I move along? Okay. Thank you all. I am going to, if you would indulge me for a minute, I'm going to switch slide decks. That's presentation mode quite yet. I don't see the presentation mode option. Where am I? Somebody offered a suggestion, but I didn't quite make sense. Oh, yeah. There we go. Okay, thanks. I do not have a slide on enrollment yet. We had intended to provide an enrollment update at this time, but it is university practice not to provide enrollment numbers until they're certified by the Higher Education Policy Commission. We had hoped to provide them by now and have those certified numbers, but two issues arose. One is Hepsi delayed their opening of the submission portal. But then on top of that, we had a delay in submitting our enrollment numbers from WVU Tech. And unfortunately, enrollment data is processed by Hepsi as a system. So because we had a delay in submitting the WVU Tech numbers, it delayed Hepsi in processing all of our numbers. That data has now been submitted and is being processed by Hepsi, but we don't have it certified yet. So we expect to have it in a matter of a couple of weeks. Our intent right now, with the chair's permission, is that we would come back in the December meeting and provide the enrollment data and do a presentation on that. So apologies, but we, again, don't have the certified numbers by Hepsi yet to present. So the last topic that I wanted to present on and was asked about is budget model governance. So this continues the conversation, and I believe we began several meetings ago. I'm going to ask Lisa Sharp to come up and join me. Lisa is our Assistant Vice President of Financial Integrations. She has been a central figure in the development and rollout of our budget model, which is a multi-year long project. She's been involved for a couple of years and will continue to be. She's going to provide a brief refresher on what our new budget model intends to accomplish and some of its features. And then I'll come back and talk about one of the possibilities for shared governance that we'll move toward.
Hello, everyone. So let's see if I can get my water here because I'm afraid I'll lose my voice a bit. But first slide is just a budget model update. And I know we talked about this in the spring, but I wanted to reiterate that the budget model itself is a tool. It's currently a tool in a large Excel workbook, but it is a tool that we use to make decisions from. It highlights information for us. It makes it, we're able to see things in a different way using variables or metrics, if you will, to allocate what we've determined to be the budget for the institution. So you can see on the slide that the budget model helps leadership evaluate and determine when adjustments are needed, preserving financial stability, looking at it in a different way to understand what's happening at the institution, as well as, and this is where that incentive part comes in. And when we were talking about the budget model a few years ago, the incentive-based budget model was really some of the terminology that was used. So when there is additional revenue that exceeds targeted projections, it will allow us to authorize additional spending as well as invest in additional projects. Now, there is a financial plan that you'll see on the next slide. It is posted on the web on the Division of Finance's website. It gives the budget for 25. And it shows basically what was planned. And that's what happens when we're planning the budget model. Now, we come up with projections and estimates of what we expect to come in, as well as what we expect to go out. And that's really the base of it. But then when you actually think about the university's budget as a whole, it simply is a lot of different sources coming in, and some of which are unrestricted or operational, and some are externally sponsored. So anyway, the budget model will take about 4 to 5 years to mature for us to really get an idea of what's happening within that budget model. And of course, having a challenging couple years where our margin is very thin, there's not a lot of incentive availability within that model. So we will continue to use the model to improve clarity and understanding. And we will also continue to use it to help us understand from institutionally how it's governed and what the resources are being used for. We go to the next page, and we do have a QR code for the financial plan. This did come out in e-news at some point around the turn of the fiscal year, but if you haven't read the financial plan, it's got a lot of information about what was planned and projected for the institution over the course of 25. Now, as part of the 25 budget process, it was very focused on expenditure management because of the thin margin. So when we overlay the model, the tool that does the projections and estimates using student credit hours to allocate tuition revenue or research expenditures to allocate maybe an indirect cost return or to allocate all those support unit costs. And I know the mechanics of the budget model are out on the web as well, if you're interested in refreshing on that. Essentially, once we get past the expense management, then you can actually see, we can see, okay, well, this is what we intend the resources to be, and here's the expenditures we know about, and then, of course, that margin that you will see in the financial plan. I started out by saying that the model is in Excel. It's a big Excel workbook. But as we move into Workday, there will be a function of Workday that we'll be using that we will fully implement the model within. Therefore, it will be something that it will be part of our financial system. So with that, I'm going to stop and I can take questions, or you can go ahead with the governance piece, so we can take questions after. Okay.
So this is roughly we worked with Huron to develop our governance process for managing and putting together a budget and then managing the budget model and all of its features. On the right-hand side, you see the process that we currently utilize for constructing a budget and then talking about the different major features of that budget model. It starts at the bottom and then moves up. And as you can see, we really have two different types of units in the budget model. One is the primary units. These would be things like the colleges and the schools, as well as the auxiliary units that, by and large, produce a fair bit of their own revenue and can support themselves largely through that revenue generation. And then on the other side, you have the support units, ones that aren't revenue generating, and hence, obviously, that are supported and provide support to the rest of the university and the primary units. We start the budget building process by them constructing their expense, their personnel rosters, their operating expenses, et cetera, and then pushes up to eventually the VPs or the leads that oversee their respective units. Once those budgets are compiled, they feed up to a university planning committee, or in this case, university budget and planning committee, which then is fed up to a university leadership committee, which then finds its way to our president, and eventually we get an approved budget by the Board of Governors. This is the process that we're utilizing and is currently active as a way of building the budget. And even if we don't have each of these committees functioning by the exact name up here, by function, this is the process that is being used. We don't have a university budget and planning committee by name right now. We have a university planning committee, but again, functionally, it operates exactly as intended here by way of building up a budget model. On the left-hand side, you see some advisory groups, and 3 of them specifically. 2 are already in play. You have a university enrollment focus group. This is one that, as its name implies, each year tries to project our enrollment numbers that our budget is built on as best as possible. Right now, our budget is built heavily on tuition revenue. It accounts for ballparking at about 40% of our revenue that we operate off of. Enrollment's a major feature of our budget model. So we want to make sure that we do as good a job as possible at projecting our enrollment numbers so that it feeds into our budget. Right now, that budget or the enrollment is really kind of a multi-month exercise at building those projections. It includes centrally people from the provost office, from finance, from enrollment management, from institutional research. But then it also utilizes an iterative process that engages the departments and the department chairs, and it engages the deans. So through an iterative process across multiple months, we try to zero in on an overall enrollment projection number, including things like first-time freshmen, what kind of a retention rate we expect to see, how many returning students that get us to an overall enrollment number that we can then use to start building in this case, an FY25 budget for a given year. So that is a very active group. And we each year seem to expand the number of people involved and change our processes a little bit so that we can get better and better, learning along the way to get improved projection numbers for enrollment. At the bottom of that, we have our Dean's Leadership Council. And as the name implies, this is a place where we can go in as needed, bounce ideas around with the deans on not just budget, but any other number of things that affect the university. The one in the middle is the one that's shaded a little bit differently because this is a group that we have not yet activated. I will spend a little bit of time talking about this next and then talk about once we do act, what it might look like when we do activate it, and then talk a little bit about what it will look like, the conditions under which we will move to activate. So again, this is proposed. This is not in concrete. This is what we worked on with Huron to say, what might an advisory group look like when we do go to implement it. So again, suggestive, but not definitive. But you can see the intent here is that we get a broad representation across the university of people who help feed into and might understand different features of our budget. So this would be led by a couple of people from central administration, but again, on a rotating membership basis, we would have people from the associate dean ranks. We would have some auxiliary leadership representatives. We would have people from the academic chair ranks. We would have a leadership representative from DEI. We would have our faculty senate represented by either the chair or the incoming chair. We would have a WVU Foundation representative. We would have somebody from institutional research or data and analytics representative. We'd have somebody from our provost faculty advisory council, somebody from the research office. And then we would have a student representative from SGA as well as a staff representative, and then somebody from student life. Again, this list may expand both in number and functions that are represented as we learn a little bit more. The intent being that it's, again, suggestive, not definitive, but the intent is to get broad representation so that we, one, have chance for many voices to be heard, and number two, in the process, benefit from those multiple voices and perspectives by way of improving our budget model and how it operates. So again, when we go to implement this group, this is an example of what it might look like. Okay. Now, here's where I want to spend a little bit of time, then we can take some questions after this. Really, these advisory groups, and then especially this stakeholder advisory group that I just highlighted as an example, the two most relevant conditions under which it would participate in the model are twofold. One is when we have a positive margin to manage. And as Lisa just indicated, our margin is really thin right now. That shouldn't come as a surprise to you. Coming out of the year that we did, we feel very good that we have posted some, our FY25 budget puts us in a slightly positive position, which is a great place to be. We of course seek to make it bigger, but until we get a more stable, consistently stable and bigger positive margin, really we're looking at that margin as more of a contingency rather than something we can consistently count on and manage and operate from. And really, the advisory council is there to help us decide when we do have a consistent margin that we can start to look to make investments on. That's where we want some of its input. We're not there yet. When we do start to approach on that, a consistent positive margin, that's when we'd start looking to implement that advisory group. The other is when we start to make some changes to major features in our budget model. I think Lisa mentioned, and forgive me if I didn't, but the budget model takes 4 to 5 years to mature. We're on the nascent stage of the implementation of our budget model. When you look at things like the variables that feed into how, for example, expenses are allocated across the different units, those are major features of our model. We're not going to change that on a yearly basis. We need to let our model stabilize, see how it works before we learn as to how some changes might happen. Once we hit that point, which might be a couple of 3 years in, then we'll start looking, okay, what's working, what needs to be considered for changes. That's where we would also want to engage an advisory group. All this is to say that we're not ready to compose and activate this advisory group because one, we don't have a positive margin to operate off of yet consistently, and two, we're not at the stage yet where we're going to consider major changes to our budget model. We're just not at that stage yet. We will be, we're not yet, but when we are, that's when we start bringing these broad stakeholder groups together. Right now, as Lisa indicated, we are managing to expenses for the most part. That's important, but it really doesn't suggest that now's the time to activate that stakeholder group. The one thing that I do want to work, this consistently comes up, I think it came up at the last faculty senate meeting, but it's worth stating again because I know there is some, not confusion, concern out there. We hear from faculty from time to time that sitting in your departments, you don't know what your budget is. And that is a concern. So a couple of comments there. We in the provost office are working with the deans to do two things. One is make sure that they are providing necessary budget information to their departments and their faculty. That is an active conversation with the deans to find the ways that that information can be shared. We do not want to have a situation where faculty are unaware of what their department's budgets are. Number two is when we do hit that stage where there are some surplus resources, not only do we start then activating that advisory group, but then we need to make sure that those resources find their ways from the dean's office down to the departments and the faculties in a consistent, a transparent, and a fair manner. And we continue to work with the deans so that when we do find ourselves in that position, hopefully in the near future, that we've got, again, I don't want to suggest some hard and fast rules. We're not in the business of trying to micromanage the deans. They've got to have some autonomy, but we do need to have some guardrails and some guidelines that help ensure that consistency, transparency, and fairness are part of the features of how resources are managed inside the college. So that's some of the work that we continue to do with the deans so that we hit that position. I would offer this, and I, also, I think Provost Kreider would offer the same. If you, as a faculty member, are unclear what your budget is, that is not because there isn't a departmental budget. It is there. I think Paula suggested at our last meeting that those budgets were approved at the tail end of last summer, the middle of last summer. Those budgets exist. If you do not know what your budget is, visit with your department chair and or go to your dean's office, ask. And we're also encouraging our deans to share those budgets so that the faculty know that they're there. They're there, just ask, and we'll encourage that kind of communication as well. There's no reason that can't be shared. And we would encourage you to ask questions, and we will encourage that information be shared to the faculty as well. And with that, I will stop, and Lisa and I can answer any questions. If there are others, we've got other people, including Paula, who can come up and answer some questions. I'm happy to do so. Frankie?
Frankie Tack, College of Applied Human Sciences. Thank you for this information. And I do understand that it's all evolving. And if you could clarify something for me, because I'm still, I guess, not getting it. This has been talked about as the colleges having to stand on their own 2 feet, as it were, with the understanding that they would be paying for things like square footage, getting bills, as it were, and that they would also have a portion of subvention to help out others, that some people may never be in the black. I mean, I get that. But every time we talk about this, it all still sounds very centrally managed. And the idea of we really don't do any of this until we have a positive margin. That's not colleges standing on their own. I mean, I thought what was going to happen, my understanding was, and again, I'm fully allow, as I do every time we talk about anything with finance, that I may just not be don't have enough to understand it. But colleges were supposed to be getting income based on semester credit hour generation. Then they were going to pay all these bills for the services rendered, including, I'm using square footage because, we went through a big move this summer. Everybody changed offices. We squashed this all up because we were going to have to pay for square footage, as an example. And I don't hear any of it. I don't hear any of that. I hear it's very still centrally driven. And, if we ever as a university get a positive margin, then we'll get some people together to figure out how we're going to spread that around. That to me doesn't sound like where I thought we were going.
You want to start? Sure. Okay.
So we're working our way into that, Nike. So it was very expense focused. So when we talk about square footage and allocation of those costs, the model itself is a tool to look at resources and uses. But there's a lot of subsidization, or you've heard the term subvention, that as we move with a thin margin or no margin, but a very thin margin. A lot of things are subsidized, right? So to move fully into the model with those transactions in a time of a challenging time was challenging or more difficult. And so we've worked through focusing on expenses, but overlaying that model so that the units, the colleges, the schools, the primary units can see, here's what happens when you use these predetermined metrics like square footage or like student credit hours or like any one of those things that our committee several years ago put together for the budget model, so we could see the resources and the uses differently than we've done in the past.
So is what I described where we're headed, once we're mature with it in, say, 5 years and we have these new computer systems, is what I described where we're headed?
Yes, I think so. And I made the point to talk about Workday because we are operating within an Excel workbook. It's a lot of pages, a lot of information, a lot of formulas, but it works quite well. But as we implement a financial planning system as part of our budgeting system, then yeah, that's exactly where we're going.
And will our colleges and our departments, here, I'm sorry, I've exceeded my number of questions. Diana, shall I stand down? Okay, I can wait.
I just offer to Frankie, just not a new question, but answering that question still on the table. I think of it in terms of this, until we get a consistent positive margin, all of our degrees of freedom are eaten up, right? I mean, it's not just the system we operate under, Workday, but we just don't have a lot of degrees of freedom until we get that positive margin.
But my
And we are
college may
moving
have a
toward it.
positive margin.
Right.
And another
but it
college
ex-
might not.
Yeah, but it exists in a larger system that has to be subdued. And that's the issue. Understood.
Thank you. Aaron Ostrowski, School of Nursing. And I just went through an accreditation visit October 16th and 17th. And we're a new program. And I'm a new director of that program, starting it in 2019. So I've been learning how to work within this system, and I have a standard to speak to, and it's the CRNA program administrator has the authority to prepare and administer the program budget. So I got a pointed question from the accreditors saying, are you able to prepare and administer your budget? And I said, I don't think so. That was an honest answer that I could give them. But in working with my dean, we've had a follow-up meeting, and I said, is this the 4-line snippet that I get from our office that really is in Greek? And I have no idea what a budget item is that's allocated to my program through the HSC, through the school, and all of these layers. I cannot translate for my accreditors what my allocated program budget is. So I'm working with the dean, and I'm glad to see these bullet points up here, but would the dean have the latitude to translate budget items? And I realize that your level, very high, that you would not be able to know what my program level needs are, but are we able to translate that and give that to my accreditors? Because I will have the answer to that in a couple months.
So I will attempt to answer that in the abstract, not knowing your program and its specifics. And then if Paula, I don't know if you want to speak to it or not, but let me start here. We have dealt with like instances where there are specific accreditation needs and the need to address that kind of budgetary authority control. We have seen instances and worked through instances where we expect a program, allow for a program, facilitate that where a program or a department works with the dean to develop a very specific budget. And if that doesn't fit within the college's current budget, we work centrally to make sure that needs are addressed. Listen, if there are either from an operational or a financial perspective, certain accreditation needs that have to be addressed, we want to work with the colleges and then down to the departments to make sure that they are being addressed to whatever ability we can. So whether it becomes an issue of needing to backfill a little bit on financial resources, we will work with the deans to make that a reality to the degree that we can. And if that means providing information at a detailed level budgetarily, we'll work with the dean's office to provide that to you so that you can deliver that to the accrediting body. Again, not knowing what your specific challenges are with your accrediting body, I've got to believe that there is a way for us working together to address those needs.
Perfect. Thank you.
You have a question? Vladislav?
Yes, hi, Vlad Ketsic, Starter College. So several faculty in Starter College asked me specifically to ask you when they're going to get their overheads, research overheads that have been frozen for the last 2 years. And the second question, you were talking about retention, faculty retention. Do you have any data on the dollar value that was spent for the newly hired faculty members in the last 4 or 5 years who spent that money and left voluntary university?
So let me answer the second question first. We have not compiled that. Are you talking about with regard to their startup costs or salaries?
Yes, startup funds that they receive when they are hired.
So we have not parsed, we do have the startup costs from various colleges. We haven't compiled that information into who has left versus who has stayed. No, that is something we could look at. With regards to your first question, that is a project that we're in the middle of right now. We're working with the board who has taken an interest in this topic as well. We are not going to be able to free up all those reserves right away, but we are looking to free up a good chunk of them in this fiscal year. We have collected from each of the deans of the main campus colleges and the HSC schools their prioritized list for spend this year. We just finished compiling that list literally at the end of last week. We are interpreting that list and going back to the deans for any kind of clarifying discussions we need to have. But what we anticipate is that we are in probably within about 1 to 2 weeks of authorizing an initial spend based on those prioritized lists. I can't tell you who is going to be authorized and how much. That is something we're still working on, but this has become an important project for over the span of several years, starting to move those reserves down towards spending them out. It's something important to us and it's important to the board because it's important to our faculty. So I would ask for just a little bit more patience, but I think you'll see movement on that within the next 1 to 2 weeks. Where again, we're not going to be able to address everybody's needs, but we'll start addressing some of those needs in short order. And this will become an active project each year where we'll start to budget for spending some of those reserves. So each year we're going to solicit prioritizations from the deans so that we can release some of those reserves. And the hope is, I mean, I can't give you an exact dollar amount, but the intent would be that we're going to address, several $1 million a year of reserve spends over the next several years so that we can start getting into the larger dollar amount.
Joe Jones, College of Creative Arts and Media. I think getting to Frankie's point here, that this budget model seems like we're no longer one university, that we are all individualized units who kind of have to make our own way. So if you could allay my fears a little bit, allay our fears a little bit, that the budget model has been described as a tool to use metrics to determine when adjustments are needed. Are there other principles and values guiding these tools, or is it purely numbers based where we suddenly don't have a lot of math majors? Everybody wants to be a social media influencer. We're going to put a bunch of money into making a social media influencer program or something like that. So could you talk to other principles and values that maybe outside of metrics as a tool that guide this model? That would be, I think, appreciated to hear.
Sure. I'll start with a couple and then I'm going to ask Lisa to jump in because I think she knows this budget model as well as anybody. I will tell you that right off the top, we took, and this isn't numbers driven, but we're a land grant university. So there's land grant. As funds come in from the state and elsewhere, there's a cut right off the top that goes to support the land grant mission of the university. So to extension, for example, and others, because that's a values proposition from the university's perspective. There are other colleges that are, let's say, well, we have a list of state priority programs, for example. And some of those might not, from a metrics perspective, be ones that are on a growth trajectory, but they're important to the state. And as the state's land grant institution, it's important that we support them, and we will do so. And that oftentimes means subvention. So the metrics might say, this might not be a place that you would necessarily want to put resources, but we as an institution make a values judgment and say it's going to go there. So numbers are a consideration. They're not the only consideration. We also make some very strong values judgments in the budget model as to how resources are going to be, where resources go. Those are two examples, but the budget model allows for those kinds of value statements to be made and acted upon within the budget model. Lisa, do you want to add?
The only thing I would add, and it is metrics driven, but we are stronger together. So, and if you look back at history, we've always been subvening each other. Different units have been able to maybe bring in more individuals, more students, more programs. Maybe they're a heavy research entity. So we've worked together to be the powerful and strong university that we are. So as Mark said, yes, we are using metrics to guide decisions, but it's not the only guidance. And Mark also talked about the governance structure or the organization. And as we heal and have, that the stronger bottom line and continue to invest in our programs, that's where those, committees come into play to help us, advise, determine where are we going and what do we need to do.
If I could just ask a follow-up, because the model you presented as well, kind of everything does flow to the top. So is it the president's principles and values that really set that whole idea of what we value, like getting rid of foreign languages, for example, something like that? Like, it's the president themselves, their values and principles that get to decide what we cut when it's not profitable anymore? Or those advisory committees actually have power?
Well, I think at the end of the day, I would answer it this way. The budget is ultimately approved by our Board of Governors. So they're the ultimate arbiter of what our values, how they're implemented and acted upon within a budget. But again, there are a lot of voices that feed into that. And a lot of different voices with a lot of different pieces of information.
Thank you.
We have one question online. Douglas Terry.
Hello. My question is in regards to the budget. You had mentioned that departments or units have been told their budget. However, it's my understanding that in Tech Campus, I'm from the School of Arts and Sciences, that we don't have a budget yet. Do you know if budgets have also been sent to the units at WVU Tech?
Yes, they should be. And let me clarify. I'm not going to suggest that every department has been told their budgets. I am going to suggest that every department has a budget. Whether that's been communicated or not, I can't personally attest to that, and it wouldn't. But yes, those budgets have been sent to Potomac State, to WVU Tech, and the others as well. So they are available.
I have one more question. Yeah, you mentioned that Tech was late in sending its enrollment figures. Is that been resolved?
Yes, it has, and they've been submitted to HEPC now.
Thank you very much.
Hi, Lauren Printo with Extension. I just have a question for clarification about the budget. So the budget shows further reductions in salary overall for the university in FY25. Could you all provide some background on how that projection was made or how those numbers are being accomplished? Is it through attrition or other means that we're going to continue to reduce in this active year in our overall salary?
It wouldn't be for anticipated additional reductions. It would be literally it's the result of academic transformation, and the reductions that we've already seen from that. So it's attrition already realized.
Okay, so that's just being realized in the year after.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Brian Powell from Statler College. Following up on Vlad Kokovic's comment from online, it would be helpful, I think, also not to see just the startup funds that were spent on people who resigned, but also people who were RIFed. I know within my home department, we have brought on 2 new faculty last academic year, and then the provost office turned around and RIFed both of them. So some money was probably lost there, I'd imagine. I do have a question for you, though. As you mentioned, the university's values are expressed through its budget with part of the allocation there. The financial plan that you shared really is 40,000-foot view of the total values. Are figures available for allocations to colleges and individual units, including what the dollar amounts are and the metrics that were used to support generating those to the extent that student credit hours and majors were supposed to be driving this new budget model? It'd be helpful to understand what our values are with being able to understand how we're actually allocating resources.
Yeah, understood. I don't have an answer to that right now. I'll have to come back to you on that.
Okay, I think it'd be helpful if that could be shared.
Hi, Mark. Scott Wayne, Statler College of Engineering and Mineral Resources. So I think we've heard quite a bit about the metrics that are used to allocate resources to the primary units. I'm a little more interested in the metrics and how the governance structure works on the cost side, supporting units. What input mechanisms exist for broad perspective on whether those units are adequately resourced to perform the mission, whether additional investments need to be made, or any of those units might be oversized. I know we have the committees, that's the Budget and Planning Committee, I think that we call it. But I didn't see any governance mechanisms on that side in the plan you presented so far today. So what's the process on that side of it?
Yeah. So I'll start by offering this. At the functional unit level, we just went through a fairly comprehensive exercise with the Board of Governors, where each unit provided an administrative review of what they look like, what their growth, and there was a report to Faculty Senate, but I think that was the beginning stages of oversight into whether we were properly staffed at the administrative level within each of the functional areas at administrative, as well as in the administrative offices of colleges and schools. So I think, and the commitment was made that that would not be a one-time exercise, but an ongoing, regularly reviewed process. So as we institutionalize that, I think that's one of our opportunities for governing that aspect for cost.
Would
analysis.
one of your committees have that role or responsibility in the future? Your advisory councils there, would that fall under University Budget Advisory Council? Where
Oh,
would
most
that function
certainly,
like?
yeah. And I will tell you, and if I could impose on her, I think, Frankie had sorry to call you out, Frankie, but as a Board of Governors member, she had a particular interest in this process. And I think ultimately, as we institutionalize that, forgive me for kind of imposing, but I think the Board of Governors has become interested in seeing this institutionalized. So I would say as you move up through that governance process, to the degree the Board of Governors remains interested in seeing that institutionalized, that will be your check on that.
Thank you.
Is that fair, Frankie?
Amy Weisslogel, Everly College. One last question. I really appreciate the thought that you have put into the University Budget Advisory Council and the shared governance opportunity that represents. When times are of a surplus, there's that opportunity, and I can see why maybe a council would not be the best mechanism when there's cuts to be made. You wouldn't have a lot of people advocating for cuts to their own in self-interest. But could you envision another mechanism that would allow for the same input from the community to guide the decision-making process when there are cuts to be made?
Don't have a very good answer for you right now. I'd need to think on that one. And obviously that would need to involve a whole lot of other people to imagine what that governance structure might look like. I understand the question, and I really do. Managing to expenses is an interesting exercise. So, you're right. I mean, that advisory committee trying to go through that exercise would be, I think, a bit challenging. I'm sorry, Amy, I would need to think before I gave you a good answer that wasn't just a shoot from the hip one.
No, I appreciate it, but maybe it's something to
Mhm.
revisit later.
Yeah.
Thank you for taking the time to answer all our questions. And when we work with models, we know that no model is perfect. If somebody tells me they have the perfect model, maybe 1 + 1 is 2, that's perfect. But the question that I have, and you may have kind of some measures for this, is when will you know that the model failed? So that's who works with models, and here there's several modelers. So we know when a model is failing because we have measurements that will tell us. In your case, how would you know it?
So I'm trying to, yeah. Yeah, that is a very good question. Yeah, I'm trying to think of, my past life as a faculty member, trying to think of the fit index that would indicate a failing model. And yeah, so I think, go for it, Paula.
I would suggest that, the model gives us transparency into how all the colleges are performing once they've been allocated support unit costs and once we've taken into account subvention. Now, the intent of the model is to say, how long will we continue to subvene some units that perhaps aren't protected because they're a state priority unit. There might be units that we think after a point in time should be doing better. So the model would fail if we as leaders don't implement what the model is telling us. We have to use it to try to improve. We have to use it to move in the right direction. So the information is kind of mathematical, or we're allocating out resources based on metrics. We're allocating out costs based on metrics. So we'll see how a unit performs. The leaders will look at the story behind that. What's going on in this unit? Are they in growing programs? Are there programs that perhaps are losing enrollment? There's a lot of information that has to go into it, but the model will only work if we all work to why we set that model up to help us make better decisions. I don't know if that's helpful, but that's what's intended.
Yeah, Stefania Stanisha, Davis College. I don't have a real question because you already responded, but I wanted to emphasize Amy's question. I also strongly believe that we need to have an advisory council somehow, even for deciding where to cut expenses. So it's not just when we have surplus that we need to make decisions based on priorities. So I wanted to share same opinion. Thank you.
I would like to thank them for their time today and for answering all of our questions. We appreciate it. Is there any new business?
Super fast, I
Megan?
promise. Okay. Megan Light, College of Creative Arts and Media. Diana, are we sure that First Day Complete is coming back in December? Because I heard they were at exec, but are not here today because they didn't have quote unquote new information. But the truth is, we just have some questions and we were hoping to kind of ask
Right.
those before spring semester.
Yes, unfortunately, they said that they didn't have any updates that were ready for us beyond what they had presented at exec, but that they will present to us in December. That I have that confirmation.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. They obviously appeared on the original agenda. All right, any other new business or questions? Just let's just stick with business. Okay. Seeing no new business, we are adjourned. Thank you.